Hare Krishna, everyone. I'm just here about to do a video in my room. I got Tulsi Devi right here. Everyone say hi to Tulsi Devi. Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. It's my baby girls right there. They're with us. So this video I wanted to do it about the near-death experience and loving service to God, to Krishna, in the mood of devotion. Bhakti yoga. That's what bhakti yoga means. So I've been doing a lot of research on near-death experiences lately, just to see, just for my own personal benefit, my own personal understanding of really deeply what time it is here. Like, what am I doing here? Like, I want to know. And plus, I love God. I love Krishna so deeply. Krishna just means all attractive, by the way. Don't get hung up on the religiousness of just don't get hung up on religion, period. Krishna is just addressing God personally, the personality of everything, of Godhead, the Supreme. So, yeah, and I found a lot of interesting things, right? So, let me think. I just looked at a near-death experience yesterday that really had a lot of good stuff in it. I took some notes on it because it was that good and I wanted to remember for the video. So, this guy, basically, he was in a car accident that left him severely debilitated, lost his leg. He lost his baby son, and his wife. And his other surviving son was a little bit older. He survived. So, in that time, he had a near-death experience. So at that moment, he saw the light, the proverbial tunnel and all of that, and it drew him to it, and he was in this space where he saw he was running freely. He was running freely, and he was just pure, ecstatically joyful. And there was a corridor, so he went in the corridor, and he saw in this room a crib. He saw a crib, and in the crib was his baby son that had just passed away. So he held his son, and he was like, it was so real. It was more real than this, which tends to be a lot of people's near-death experience. They feel like that reality is more real than this reality. So he held the child, and then he felt someone come over him like that and embrace him. And he was like, this being was so... It was like how I felt the love for my son, like pure unconditional, but on steroids, like cosmic knowledge, just love of everything, like love of creation and the source of it all. And he felt that, and then he merged into it, and he felt that it was all love, it was all peace. And in that moment, he had a life review. He was getting shown a life review, and he was, showing all these things, these experiences of everything that made him, that personality in that lifetime. And in another near-death experience, I liked what he said. Another guy, he said that during his life review, he saw that his name was Raymond, and he was like, it felt like Raymond with an ing at the end. Like I was Raymonding. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense, definitely, because we're not the body, we're not anything that has to do with this vessel. We're the spirit soul, and we're eternal, and we all know by now that we're all just having this physical experience for many reasons. So the guy was the first guy, he was having that experience, life review, and he was like, there was no judgment. No judgment. Not at all. Not from my perceived mistakes, what I thought was wrong, my little whatever. There was no judgment, and it was simply that being. He called him God, because he never saw the being, he just felt it. He called him the God / the universe, just champions the process of learning. He was like, he said that the being told him, look at all my children, look at all them in the material world, look at on planet Earth. He was like, look at all them, you know, trying to come back to me. You know, they're doing all these things. So the universe was just championing the process of his learning. It wasn't concerned about like his sin or anything, or like what he perceived for sin, like mistakes and stuff. It was just the process of learning was being championed. You know, there were other beings there, like so proud, and it's crazy. You know, it's crazy. No judgment on that plane. No judgment at all. You know, and if there is any judgment, it's coming from you. At least in his experience. Because another thing I found out was culture has a lot to do with it. Like a lot of near-death experiences in the East have the experience of seeing Yamaraj, or being that's reading a book and basically like it's not your time and all that. But something interesting, I found an Indian guy who had a near-death experience that there was no Yamaraj. Yamaraj wasn't there, but it was a loving experience, you know, kind of. It was. The guy was an atheist. He didn't believe in God, and he saw the light. You know, he got drew through the tunnel. There were beings, like translucent beings there, that the light was shining through them, and they were communicating telepathically, and it was just very peaceful, very calm, very peaceful. And he saw that he was being atheist, you know, like very like, and very ego, like why people don't want my way, you know. And he was being shown that, not from a place of judgment, but just place of observation. So I posted that on my Facebook, so you could look at it if you want. That's the latest near-death experience video that I seen. So there were two others. Now getting back to the Bhakti Yoga topic, there were two other near-death experiences that really like stuck out to me. There was one where this lady had a near-death experience. She left her body, and she was brought to, after she had this crazy experience with the light itself. Like the light, she was like, the light was just dynamic. It was always changing. It was always changing, dynamic, crazy. Always growing, and like in bliss. Her bliss was just kept growing and growing. And at that moment she was like, if I take on any more, I'm gonna dissolve into this light. Which reminds me of Impersonal Brahman, of the living entity just merging back into the effulgence of God, and instead of just being like, I still wish to be a personality but out of service. So it sounded like she was having that experience, but she stopped it. She was like, I want to be personal still. Like I don't want to be dissolved. And then at that moment, she was transported to another realm where the quality of the light was different, but it was still, you know, the realm was peaceful, the realm was loving, and she saw beings off in the distance, and there was a hill, and they were on top of the hill. They were dressed in white robes. And she thought to herself, I want to go up there. And she was immediately there. Immediately. There was no walking. She just like, it was a realm that moves at the speed of thought, which is always in the Vedic literature. There are chariots that move at the speed of thought. So we all know what that probably is. Probably crafts. So she moved there, whatever. And she had the question like, you know, what am I doing here? And then one of the guys there turned to her and was like, this is all telepathic communication, like straight feeling, you know, there are no words on those realms. So, because you get a lot can be lost in translation with words. So that was a more natural communication. So he was like, oh, you are actually not supposed to be here yet. Like you are gonna come here, but it's not your time yet. So she looked over his shoulder and saw a whole world, like a whole city. And it made me think, like, there are, like, what are they learning about over there? Like, is there whole civilizations where everyone is on service to God? Everyone knows that they are spiritual, and everyone is on service mode to each other, because they all know that we're all part and parcels of the Creator, of Krishna. And I was just like, wow, the fact that the guy said, yet, is like, oh snap. You'll be there, if you really want to be there in a realm, in a place where you're surrounded by other living entities that love God and that are willing to serve and know that that's the real reality, you'll be there. So he asked a question. She asked him a question. She was like, I remember dying. I remember the experience I just had with the light. She was like, but what about my sins? And the guy said, there is no sin. Not like how you think about it on earth. And she was like, of course. Right? She said that. So she asked the question again, what is everything about? Like, what is the purpose of all this? So he gave her that answer in like 3 sentences or less, but she wasn't allowed to remember it. So he ended up being like, look inside yourself. So she had this ability. She was like, I don't know how I had this ability, but I was able to look deeply inside myself, to like my most core. My core, like my real deep core. And she was like, what I found there was only love. Like, only love. Love, because I knew that I was a part of God. Loving, a love of God. Like, that was my core. And then she said something that hit me right in my soul. Like, seriously, this is why I'm like sharing this video. She said, how could I ever have forgotten something so important? And when she said that, I was like, girl, I feel the same way. That's why I'm so crazy on this love, this bhakti yoga. Like, this is serious. For me, this is like, how could I have forgotten this, Like, God is so... There are no words to describe how the glory of the Creator of everything, of us, of you, of me, of our families, of our pets, of plants, of animals, of planets, of galaxies, and to still be personal with each and every one of the living entities on the material and spiritual realms. There are no words. There are no words. All I can say is, how can I serve you, please? And then for her to be like, that's my core. This is why, like, service is not always easy, but I feel the most safe when I do that. And this reminds me of something I wanted to bring up. Srila Prabhupada, who is like the guru of this age, who came from India at the age of 70 to start the Hare Krishna movement, he said something that was just, I came across it yesterday or 2 days ago. I think my brother Solomon King shared it. And it was like, even if you put a big thing like an elephant or in the ocean, and the elephant tries to go against the waves, it will be swept across. It will be swept away. It will be swept away in the waves, right? Even big things like giant ships, big things that you think are so powerful, big ships, they get swept away from the power of the ocean. But a little tiny fish, they can swim against the current because they have taken shelter of the ocean. This is the process. This is the process of taking shelter of God. When you take shelter of the Lord, like when you're in service mode, in bhakti yoga, or in service mode, you are taking shelter of the Creator of everything. In the Bhagavad Gita, which is when Krishna was on the planet 5,000 years ago talking to his cousin Arjuna on the battlefield, he said, give up all religiousness and just surrender to me. Give up all religiousness is the first part that hit me right over the head. The second part was, I will protect you from all sinful reaction. I will give you relief from all sinful reaction. Sinful reaction is all the stuff that you did from past lives karmically that you basically have to answer for. You know, what you get out is what you put back. I mean, what you put out is what you get back. That's the whole name. That's part of the material, you know, the material world. Because if you're acting karmically, if you're not in service mode in bhakti yoga, your actions have a karmic reaction, whether it's good or bad. If you act in service to God, if you offer up your actions in service out of loving devotion, those actions are not karmically bound. That's huge. That's huge. And the lady she was like, the love of God is my core. This is why there's no karmic debt to it. Because you're like, I'm waking up. I woke up. Lord, I want to be with you. Please take me back home. So the last and final thing that I'll bring about was there's actually two things. So this guy had a past life, he had a near-death experience where he saw all of his past lives, and they were up in like little bubbles, and he looked at each one of them and he could see them all playing out. He could pan in, zoom out, and they were all going on right now simultaneously. So he felt his addictions, that was the theme throughout all of his lives, and what was pulling him through to reincarnate again, to see if you can overcome that addiction. So basically, whatever you're addicted to in this physical life, that's going to follow you unless you take the actions now to overcome it. And you can do it. You can do it. You can overcome all of the things that you think that you can't do. You only have, which brings me to the last point, you only have right now. There's no past. You will not experience a past. You will not experience a future. We plan and all that because time is slow here in this dimension. But all you have is right now. You can do it. You can do it. You can overcome. You have to start one day at a time and build that momentum, and don't go back. Don't go back. That's it. You just have to stick to it. So as far as all you have is now, that near-death experience with the guy that from the original story, the original near-death experience, who lost his child, he still had one child that was alive. So after he was done with physical therapy, he came home in a wheelchair, and his son like ran out, and he had the thought like, oh man, how's he gonna take me? Like, his big strong dad is now in a wheelchair now. And the kid ran right past him, and he was like, yeah. So he turned around and he saw that the son was knocking on everybody's door, like, come see my dad, come see my dad, he's back, he made it. So he was like, my son was still proud of me, even though I was in the condition that I was in. And then eventually he came and he hugged me. And then he was like, in this moment I saw that hugging my deceased son that was on the spiritual platform, this experience was just as heavenly, just as beautiful. So heaven is not, you're not going to go somewhere. You don't need to go somewhere. Like, all you have is now. And it's how you look at it. It's how you see it, how you shape it. And if you stay with your core, if you stay with God and heavenly vibrations, it's going to be hard, of course. And my man lost his leg and his wife and baby. But in that moment, he was able to be like, this moment is just as profound, just as heavenly as any experience in another dimension. So he brought heaven on earth. And you can do that. We can all do that, but we have to make the choice. Because God's not going to come here and make that choice for us. You know, we chose to come down here in this material world and experience and all the stuff that's happening to us, because we wanted to see what it was like. So if you're ready to go back home and take shelter of your best friend, of your eternal well-wisher, the most personal relationship that you have, if you're ready for that, serve out of love. Just serve, don't think about you, and stay present. Stay in the center. Don't stay in the future, don't stay in the past. Stay here. And even if you're not doing anything, just what's around you, like what don't indulge in frivolousness. Don't waste your time, because you're not going to be here forever, and you're going to be at the end of this life like, dang, I could have done something else. I could have done something different. You're here still. Do it. Get it done. So that's pretty much all the stuff that I wanted to touch on. Take shelter. It's just a matter of remembering who you really are, which is a being of eternal love of God and love of all creation. So act that way, Really go inside and be still at least 5 minutes a day. Just be still. And you'll see these things start to really make sense to you. So, yeah, keep on keeping on. Love each other is hard. Give blessings. And make sure you receive as well, because you don't want to give all the time. You'll burn out real quick. So make sure you get that reciprocity. That's also your relationship with the Lord. It's also a reciprocal one. But being unconditional is not really worried about what you're getting back. Just know that reciprocity is real. So, alright, that's it for now. Guys, have a good day. Love you guys. Hare Krishna. All praise be to God. Say bye to Tulsi. She's the best.